So we're going to talk about heat acclimation because a lot of people thought that when I was talking about heat acclimation as a really important way to improve your conditioning as a fighter or as any kind of athlete, they thought I was talking about bro science, like I was just making things up. So you could fact check everything I'm going to talk about here. You can just look it up. You can Google it, YouTube it. You can chat GPT it. You could, whatever you want to do, look it up. This is facts that I'm talking about right here, right? So heat acclimation, what is it? Heat acclimation is basically your body's ability to adapt to high temperatures. That's all it is, right? So when you exercise, when you fight, when you play basketball, football, no matter what kind of form of exercise you do, when you just walk up the stairs, your body is going to get hot. That's just what happens. So you want to be more able to deal with heat if you want to be in top shape, all right? Number one, we're going to talk about sweat. So what happens is when you heat acclimate, your body's going to learn to deal with sweat more efficiently. What is sweat? Sweat is just your body releasing water and salt through your pores. And then when you have that sweat on your skin, it evaporates and it cools your body down. So the better your body is at sweating, the better you'll be at staying cool in high temperatures. There's 4 things that happens. The number 1 thing is your body starts to sweat sooner. The sooner your body starts to sweat, the faster you start to cool down. The longer it takes for your body to sweat, the longer it takes for you to start cooling down. Number 2 is your body is actually going to sweat more when you're heat acclimated. So the better your body is at dealing with the heat, the more sweat your body is going to produce. The more sweat on your skin, the more evaporation is going to happen and the cooler your body is going to become in high temperatures. Third, your body's going to be able to sweat for longer. The longer you sweat, the longer you can stay cool. Once that sweat dries up, it's a wrap. Your body temperature is going to shoot up and you're not going to be able to perform anymore. So you want to be able to sweat for as long as possible. But here's the key. Number 4 ties all of it together. Your body's ability to sweat efficiently. Because what happens is when you're not heat acclimated, your body's going to start pouring out a bunch of salt along with the water. So the more salt is falling out of your skin, the more you're going to start to become dehydrated. And when you become dehydrated, you risk heat exhaustion. You risk heat stroke. You risk muscle cramps. You don't want that to happen. So when you're heat acclimated, what happens is your body is going to actually start to drop less salt. It's going to sweat more water. It's going to sweat water sooner and longer. But the salt concentration in your sweat goes down drastically, which means you're going to stay hydrated even though you're sweating sooner, more, and longer. Now, what that's going to mean is now you're not going to be risking that heat exhaustion, that heat stroke, or those muscle cramps. You get to avoid all that, which means you're going to be able to fight and feel good or play whatever your sport is and still feel good for longer. Now, so we got sweat out the way, right? Your body sweats more. That's always going to be a benefit. Now, what happens is when you're heat acclimated, your body's going to start to produce more plasma. Plasma is the liquid portion of your blood. I want you guys to think about something real quick. Remember when TJ Dillashaw, he did EPOs to fight Henry Cejudo. Now, what EPOs does is an EPO pretty much makes your body produce more red blood cells. The more red blood cells your body has, the more oxygen your body can deliver to the muscles. So similar to what TJ did is a natural thing that your body can do when you build a heat acclimation, right? When your body adapts to heat better. So when your body produces more plasma, it doesn't produce more red blood cells like an EPO causes, but it produces more liquid volume in your blood. And the more liquid volume your body has, the easier it is for your heart to pump blood. So it takes less beats to pump the same amount of blood. So for example, let's say if you're doing a certain exercise and that certain exercise has your heart rate at 160. Well, if you're like highly heat acclimated, you can pretty much drop your heart rate by up to 8 beats when you're like really heat acclimated. So instead of 160 being where your heart rate is resting at when you're doing this exercise, your heart rate can be all the way down at 152 just because how much more plasma or how much more water content is in your blood, making it your body much more efficient at pumping blood all around. So the same effect that TJ Dillashaw pretty much had is the same effect that heat acclimation would cause for your body because you're producing more plasma. So you want to be heat acclimated. The next thing we're going to talk about is pretty much the conditioning aspects of being heat acclimated. So when you're heat acclimated, your body's VO2 max is going to rise. A VO2 max is pretty much your body's ability to take oxygen and turn it into energy. That's all it really is. So the higher your VO2 max is, the more oxygen your body can use and convert into energy. The lower your VO2 max is, the less your body can use oxygen to turn into energy. Now, this is pretty much your energy system that's aerobic. So for example, if you go out for a long, slow jog, or if you are hitting the bag at a good, steady pace, that's your aerobic cardio system, right? That's your steady state cardio. And what that means is your body's using oxygen for fuel. So the higher your VO2 max is, the longer you can run, the longer you can do a steady state jump rope or bag work or even light sparring, things like that, because your body's ability to convert oxygen to fuel is much more efficient. Also, your VO2 max is going to help you recover in between rounds. So let's say if you go hard, let's say you do a sprint and then you rest. Well, when you're resting, your body's going to have an easier time using oxygen and turning it into fuel. So that's also going to help you with your recovery in between hard efforts. Now, we're going to move over to the next portion, your lactic threshold. Your body's ability to be heat acclimated or to adapt to heat is going to raise your lactic threshold. What is your lactic threshold? Your lactic threshold is the point at which your body stops using oxygen for fuel, your aerobic energy system, and starts using carbs for fuel, your anaerobic energy system. Your lactic threshold is that point in between. So the higher your lactic threshold is, the longer it's going to take for your body to start consuming carbs for fuel. Why do we not want to use carbs for fuel? Why do we want to preserve that as much as we can? The reason why you don't want to use carbs for fuel as much as possible, if you could use just oxygen for fuel, that's usually going to be better, because when you use carbs for fuel, lactic acid is dropped into your body. Lactic acid is that stuff that makes your arms burn when you're lifting weights. It makes your legs heavy. And, that fatigued feeling when you're starting to burn out, that's lactic acid being dropped into your blood, pretty much. So if we're using carbs for fuel, by having our heart rate so high, you're going to start getting fatigued really fast. You can never match. Like, let's say if I was running a marathon and if I was sprinting, you can never sprint as long as you could run a marathon, right? You could run a marathon 26 miles, but a max intensity sprint lasts for about 6 to 12 seconds. So you cannot just be dumping lactic acid into your blood forever. So that's why the higher your lactic threshold is, the better, because now you're not going to be converting carbs for fuel so soon. You can preserve that and be using oxygen longer for a higher heart rate. So for example, say if your lactic threshold is 150 beats per minute, that means everything before this, you're using oxygen for fuel. The closer you get to your lactic threshold, the more lactic acid is going to begin being used for fuel. And then once you cross this, now you're like predominantly using carbs for fuel and you're dropping more lactic acid. So the higher we can get this line right here from 150, if we can raise it to 160, now we can be at 150 heart beats per minute and still be using mostly oxygen. So we want to raise that lactic threshold higher, and being heat acclimated does this for you. The more your body can deal with heat, the higher your lactic threshold is going to get. So now we have the last one as far as when it comes to conditioning. You have your time to exhaustion. So now let's think about this. Your time to exhaustion is pretty much how long you can maintain a certain pace before you have to ease back. So let's say you have your aerobic cardio, right? Your steady state cardio, you're running slow, you're hitting the bag lightly, you're light sparring, you're going at a slow pace in a fight maybe. When you cross this line, this lactic threshold line, say it's at 155, when you cross that line, now you're starting to use carbs for energy, your anaerobic energy system. When you have a higher time to exhaustion, you can stay over this line for longer before having to come back down to recover and then go back again. So you want to have your time to exhaustion be greater. If you have a greater time to exhaustion, you can hang out past this lactic threshold for a longer period of time. When you're heat acclimated, your body's actually going to help you to improve your time to exhaustion, which is another benefit of being heat acclimated. The biggest thing is your body's ability to deal with heat is just going to go through the roof. You're going to have a lower strain on your heart, lower strain on your body. Your perceived exertion drops when you're used to the heat, because let's say you're in good shape, but when that heat hits you, it's like, oh my goodness, I must be working so hard because I'm so hot. Well, you start to get used to being hot, and your perceived exertion is going to be lower. Like, you're going to be like, okay, I'm not actually going that crazy. I'm used to being hot. Like, this is normal for me. So all around the body, your body's dealing with heat, processing heat, adapting to heat just way better, which is why you want to have heat acclimation as a part of your training regimen. So how long does it take to become heat acclimated? It could take anywhere from like 3 to 2 weeks. Heat acclimation happens fast. Now, how do you do it? Sauna work. That's the simplest way you can do it. Go to a sauna and hang out in a sauna for a while, 3-4 times a week. You could even do some light shadow boxing in the sauna. You could, if you have a garage in the summertime, and if there's 150 degrees in there, obviously be careful. Make sure you're hydrated. Drink water. Make sure you have salt in your water, whatever the case. Be hydrated. Don't be crazy. Go in your sauna. Go in your garage in the summer. Do some work in there while it's hot. I like to go to a place called Hot Works. Hot Works is a place that they have these saunas, and inside the saunas they have these assault bikes and different things that you can do inside the saunas. That's what I do for my cardio, so that way I'm working my cardio and I'm working my heat acclimation at the same time. But either way you cut it, you want to do work in the heat. The more work that you do in the heat, the better. And then imagine when you go to fight in a cool environment. You go to the UFC, you fight in the UFC, I'm pretty sure it's going to be conditioned in there, right? It's going to be air conditioned. Let's say if you just go to an amateur fight or you go to any of these, fighting events, the chances are that it's not going to be super hot. The air is going to be conditioned and things like that. So now when you're training inside of a cooler condition, it's easy. Like, what? I'm used to training in 130 degrees. This is easy. Close the door though. But yeah, I'm going to take some questions now, guys. Give me 1 second. I'm going to take some questions.